if he didn't think that then, I can only imagine this right there, that last goal where you at least come back, just like against Manchester United. You say to yourself, I mean, they knew before this game that there was no chance of making top four, obviously, and they've been up there for most of the season. As bad as they've been, with all the issues that they've had so far, with Antonio Conte, one of them, and Stellini then coming as an intern and losing all the games, and now Ryan Mason is there. They're still there or thereabout, which is amazing in itself, I suppose. But I think after that fourth goal, he has to. And I think if he does, I don't know who can begrudge him, right? I mean, of course, he did ask for a transfer, but did stay. I mean, he's been given Spurs an incredible service. I mean, even this season, this late in the season, where you're losing 6-1, again, against United was 2-0. They came back. Here, it's a heartbreaker anyway, no matter how you slice it, because you would have felt much better about yourself. As in general, if it ended 3-3, it would show that little bit of a character. He has to be thinking it's just impossible. Obviously, a lot will depend on who the manager is. Is there a person out there that can convince him to stay? I don't know who would that have to be to come in, and I don't know how much money they would have to spend again to get this team going to a level where Manchester City are right now. I mean, that's impossible. Top four, Arsenal are growing. I'm sure Chelsea will come good. It's just a question of time. There's just too much money there, too much talent, and they'll spend even more money that Spurs can't afford to spend. So I suspect that he has to go. I mean, his contract is up after next season. I mean, they almost have to think, I mean, keep him against his will again and then get nothing for him. I mean, it seems silly to me if you're rebuilding the side.
Yeah, it's not healthy for the player. It's not healthy for the club, of course, to have to force somebody to stay. Those 208 Premier League goals, by the way, he's tied Wayne Rooney for the second most goals in Premier League history. So he's not just any player, Janusz, and it's difficult to think that his buddy, Heung-min Son, could be like, hey, stick with me for a few more seasons, please, I need you. And of course, those fans that want to keep him around as well. In terms of the future for this Spurs team, the games that they still have, of course, to play, where do you see the Spurs finishing at least this season under interim coach Mason?
Well, I think they'll fight for Europe still, right? I mean, they're in European places now, right now. I think still in Europe. I mean, there's Conference League, which, I mean, you kind of look upon it. If you're Spurs, if you're one of the top, big six, you say to yourself, we're in the Champions League final against Liverpool not all that long ago. In Champions League again this year. But look at West Ham. It's still financially feasible for you to be there. I think, same goes, by the way, for Liverpool, because they likely finish in fifth and they're not used to playing in Europa League. They're used to winning Champions League multiple times, right? They're up there with the Milans and Real Madrid. Well, Real Madrid is way ahead of everybody, but I think you understand, you understand what I mean. But I think, it also for big clubs, it allows the big squads to be rotated. It's important to gain the experience to play against some good teams in Europa League. We've seen Europa League this year. I mean, it almost has a feel of a Champions League. There's some big names in that competition. So I think that's the goal for Spurs, for sure. I mean, you look at them, there's still a lot of talent in that group, and we'll see how they deal with it. But my goodness, I mean, Newcastle 6-1. This is another heartbreaker. But think about it. I mean, they lost 4-3, and they had more chances than Liverpool, didn't they? I mean, I look at 4 or 5 unbelievable chances. Hit the post 2 or 3 times. I mean, one-on-one situations. In that second half, they've created more dangerous situation than Liverpool.
Yeah, and it shows this reactive team, this mental team who has been able to react that way, of course, in the second halves. And the second halves, as we have, of course, mentioned, very different from what we're seeing from this side in the first half. And there's a lot of work to be done.
What did Conte say? You reminded me before the game. Conte had a quote, and I mean, it's coming good. Still don't like it, but it's coming good. When because the flip side of everything, if you're looking for sliver of positive news, which I've mentioned already about them, the flip side is that, look what's happened against Manchester United. Look what's happened against Liverpool. When pressure's off, this team's starting to play because there is enough. Heung-min Son, bad season, of course, but look at it today. I mean, he was 2 or 3 times incredibly close. Normally, Heung-min Son from last season, every one of them is a goal. Right? I mean, Harry Kane had a couple of chances that he didn't take advantage. I think I think of Harry Kane. On one hand, I say, well, he's the one constant, 25 goals in every game, even against Newcastle and here. He always scores. But then part of me thinks that he's got to do more even. And I know that's a big ask. And, because I wonder if he sometimes feel in these big losses where, like, well, I've done my job. But what does that mean? You've done your job. Yes, you scored a goal, but could you galvanize the team to do more? Could you have a bigger input on the team so you play better? You gave us those stats. How many goals? 20 goals in the first 25 minutes, right? And look, I don't know. I'm not in that dressing room, and I'm sure he's doing part of that. But so the flip side is that this team definitely plays better when the pressure is off. And I think that's what Antonio Conte was insinuating.
Yeah, he said the other way around, Janusz, that these players don't like to play under pressure. They don't like to play under stress. I think today was a pretty stressful and pressureful situation, right?
Yeah, I think though he meant the stress when everything's still on the line, not when the game is lost, pretty much, right? That is the difference. That's the difference, that you dictate what happens in a game. You are the one that's 2, 3, 4-0 up in the games that you're supposed to win. And even against the big teams, that you're the team that comes to you and said, you better watch out. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems to have been reflected with this game that we saw today. Of course, with that 4-3 result, maybe not that sweet taste that the fans wanted at the end of the day with those 3 points. And to kind of wrap things up, Janusz, thinking of what Spurs has ahead of them, not only, of course, on the pitch, but thinking about next season. And this last fan question, of course, Harry Kane. No, not Harry Kane. At this rate, we already talked about Harry Kane. Why would anyone want the Tottenham job?
Because it's a massive club. It's a London club. It's got a beautiful, if not the best stadium in Europe, maybe even in the world right now. This is a team that is desperate for that trophy, right? So if our manager, look, I don't want to say it's easy to step into a Manchester City, the clubs that always win, but sometimes there are coaches, and I've met few, and I wonder if I were ever a coach, if I would go that way. Just imagine the coach that gets it right. Just imagine. And, there are a lot of coaches that like this sort of a challenge because it seems that, anyone that comes in fails there. The Jose Mourinho's, the Antonio Conte, they haven't won a trophy in such a long time, right? So I think there are managers out there that see this as a massive project, but think, maybe I can do it. I believe that I can do it. And if I do it, I mean, that coach is a legend automatically. They want a trophy. And it's not necessarily that they have to win the Premier League, right? They will take any trophy. But, winning breeds, confidence, right? So if they were to win the League Cup or the FA Cup or I don't know, Conference League, you can go from strength to strength. I mean, just look at Jose Mourinho. I mentioned him last season with Roma in Conference League. Did you see that stadium? I mean, the Olympic Stadium in Rome. I mean, it was unbelievable scenes in the third-rate competition. And this is how much it was appreciated by the fans. So imagine, and similar story, Roma's been, in Europe, never won it. I think they never won. I think they haven't. And then think of Spurs if they were to win something on the new coach. So I think this job is attractive. It should be attractive. If I were a coach and I wasn't wanted by the biggest teams in the world, I'd take it.
Yeah, it would be a great challenge to turn it around, and why not get that love from the fans if they are able to get
probably pays well. Probably pays well too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a big benefit when it comes to that. Janusz, bonus question for you, and it's a good way to wrap up this segment from our fans as well. We really appreciate all the questions. Come season's end, will Spurs or Liverpool finish higher?
No, you have to say Liverpool, and that's without really knowing by heart, the rest of the schedule, which is important. But then again, there are no easy games right now because the table is such that everyone's almost fighting for something. But I just think there's a lot of momentum going Liverpool's way, and as bad as this could have been, that fourth goal in 94th minute, believe me, as a player, that's just going to give you that extra extra oomph, extra step, I think. So, as I've said, Spurs were done. I think they were done in that terrible loss at home to Bournemouth, very, very late. That was the game that I think broke their spirit to some degree, although they did show some resiliency, as we've seen in the game against Manchester United and tonight against Liverpool.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting end of the season for Spurs. We'll see what Ryan Mason can do with the rest of this calendar. We'll see what Liverpool can do, of course, with that confidence that they've had since Jurgen Klopp, of course, has arrived, and seeing him on the bench just gives it something different. And that extra element, of course, at Anfield today that I can't even begin to imagine what it was like to be there for those 90 minutes. Janusz, great stuff as always. It's going to be an interesting end to the season, and we'll be here to talk about it if you want.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.